So what do The Simpsons, Wicked, and Despicable Me have in common? And no, it's not their humorous characters or musicals. It's that they all involve hot air balloons. If you're from New Mexico like me, then you see these floating creations all the time. But how exactly do hot air balloons work? I'm wondering what I'm doing with a duck, a rooster, and a sheep. Well, the reason is because the first hot air balloon was launched in France on September 19, 1783. And these three creatures were our first passengers. The duck was chosen because it can already fly, so scientists assumed that it would be okay at that altitude. A rooster was chosen because while it can't fly, it is in the same class as a duck of birds, so they figured it would be okay. And lastly, our lovely sheep was chosen to represent our land mammals. Together, these three creatures proved that humans could survive at that high of an altitude, plus you can do a lot in 15 minutes. Since then, balloons and ballooning have evolved to carry more than just wildlife. Now that we've heard some history, how exactly do hot air balloons work? One of the most basic principles is that hot air rises, and associated with that is buoyancy, which is why I have this trusty jar here to help me demonstrate. Scientists discovered that when you heat up air, it actually causes the air molecules to expand, to become bigger, kind of like adding water to a sponge. Because the molecules are now bigger, you're able to fit less of them into a jar. So, if I use these ping pong balls to demonstrate our hot air molecules, I'm only able to fit about 6 or 7 into this jar because of how big they are. But because of that, this jar is super light and I can lift it up over my head. However, if I use the rest of these ping pong balls to represent cold air, I'm able to fit way more into this jar, but because of that, it's also super heavy. So this demonstrates how in a hot air balloon, when we add hot air inside the balloon, it allows it to rise because the hot air is lighter than the cold air that's sitting outside of the balloon. And this simple principle is how balloons are able to rise. Now that we know how balloons are able to move up and down, how are they able to travel long distances and not just stay in one place? Balloons aren't like cars. They don't have steering wheels. They're purely at the mercy of the weather, and nature is their steering wheel. However, they're able to move with a little help from our atmosphere. While it may look simple, it actually contains layers of air that move at different speeds and in different directions. Being in a certain pocket or level of air allows you to move in one speed at one direction. So for example, say I was in this pocket of air, maybe it's taking me to the right at 8 miles an hour. Or if I was in this higher pocket of air, maybe it's taking me to the left at 20 miles per hour. So before a flight, pilots will study forecasts, wind patterns, and weather reports to help plan their routes. Because pilots are typically at the mercy of the wind, they have a general sense of the direction they're going in, but they aren't able to make sharp turns or entirely predict where they're going to land. That's why balloons end up in odd places, even on the freeway. Today, we learn a little bit more about the history of ballooning and how these inventions actually work. So next time you see a hot air balloon in the sky, just think of how they're an example of human innovation, how they're powered by just a simple scientific principle. Thanks for watching.